welcome to the Forthwrite podcast, where we have become so that we are now wearing uniforms, styled up in the exact same getup. This is not done deliberately either. This is literally just rocking up with the same vibe.
Oh man, I was assuming we were going to retake that intro, so that's good if we're keeping that, cuz I love it. Yeah, I did not get the memo, bro. We got to actually, we've definitely got to coordinate the wardrobe before we rock up. That's, I can take it. I'll save that for the end. Just ramp it up. Yeah. So apologies, but also no, because that's what you got to do. You're just aligned. You're on the same wavelength to this extent, bro. That we've
wild. Because you've got a green hat like this with the New York thing too, don't you?
I actually do, yeah. Yeah, I could have.
I thought you had that when I saw the green hat. I was like, oh no, this is wild.
That would have been even better. Yeah, man. So anyway, here we are. We've rocked up. Now we know we're going to coordinate wardrobe going forward. We'll make sure that we actually talk about it and say, mate, what are you wearing today? Let me know, or at least let's bring some. Maybe we'll come in with some options in future, so we've got a backup instead of just rocking up ready to shoot.
Great ideas. So welcome to episode 48.
Yeah, or 22. We don't know where they land, but we're doing it. And let's see where we go. Where are we going this week, mate? I'll let you set it off. We're getting close. We're getting close to a few things are happening now.
So I've put out probably by this point
26 singles.
Yeah, something like 7 or 8 songs already.
I think realistically 5, right? Because Chasing Ghosts is
yeah, probably 5.
I think it's about a 5.
Yeah, there'll be 5 or 6 songs out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And me and PEZ have this song on the album called Broken, which is got to be one of the best songs on there by far, I think, like chorus-wise and just the content, and also your verse is just absolutely phenomenal.
Cheers, babe.
It's so dope. Like it's really going to land with a lot of people who have gone through similar brokenness.
Oh yeah.
But it's really interesting because I think a lot of people have probably seen me be open about my faith and coming to Christ, and how I talk about during my journey when I started praying to a higher power. Coincidentally, before that, one of my closest friends had actually become born again Christian.
Right. He'd
had this really profound experience that was like absolutely kind of mind-blowing and very shocking at the time. And I have spoken about this friend, but just haven't spoken his name, but this is that friend.
That's what we're doing. We're taking it there.
Yeah. So I didn't want to say your name in there. I remember on one of the clips I had to edit it out and beep it because I dropped your name in there, but I didn't want to be the one to air your story out for you. So I think that's what we should talk about today, is that you actually found Christ 2 or 3 years ago, was it?
Yeah, probably something like that, man.
And just how much of a wild story that was, like, so cool.
Yeah, and I guess also we're saying the reason we maybe want to talk about it today leading into Broken is kind of the fact that I maybe touch on it at the end of the verse, because when we're talking about brokenness, and maybe we're as people when they kind of hear the song when it drops, but kind of that journey that we've gone through and which we've touched on in some of these eps along the way anyway, this feeling of kind of this void that you're never quite able to fill, and we probably tried to get there through music and then all the things that the accolades, the things that come along with that. And you that's kind of the lie, or that's at least the idea that you're fed from the world, particularly part of the zeitgeist at the time that we've grown up in. That was, follow your dreams, get all this stuff, and you're going to be happy sort of thing. And so probably that sense of disillusionment that came with that, and then kind of coupled with probably our songwriting experience and these other things, it felt like we were in search of something more. It always felt like there was something more. Which, yeah, I guess in that verse, I do kind of touch on that. It's probably the first time I've publicly said anything about the whole situation. Obviously, you've always been much more bold in that regard, which I just marvel at. And it often forces me out of my comfort zone at times when I otherwise probably wouldn't. It kind of makes you take that step. But yeah, so you want to ask a question? You want the testimony? Am I going there? I'm taking it.
That's where we're going. Yeah, that is where we're going. I think before you get onto the testimony, like you got into more new age kind of stuff, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because like the manifesting.
Yeah. All those things, all those stages that we went through.
Eckhart.
Sort of thing. Yep. Eckhart, all that stuff. So I think, and that was probably the big thing. It felt like you're always looking for something, like you swear there's something more. I guess like for context for everyone, it feels like, as we'd kind of said, like it probably, even just when you go off to school for your indoctrination, all these things, like naturally you're going to be atheist, like at the very least, like agnostic sort of thing, but just pretty reductive about the way you look at the world. And that probably maybe intellectually kind of started to hit a bit of a stalemate for me. Like it hit a point where then trying to reduce everything to just this kind of material existence started to kind of fall away, you know, when you start to look at the fact that this universe kind of sprung into existence out of nothing, and there's a moment where matter actually, trying to reduce everything to matter is really difficult if matter comes into being suddenly for no reason at some point. So that kind of, I guess a bunch of those things started to fall away where it didn't feel like enough to suffice sort of thing. But then in looking for more, you start to go out into the world and sort of search for what is it then? Like what's actually behind it all? And it felt like, yeah, we went definitely through the new agey stuff first, which probably aligned pretty heavily with where we were at too, where you're dreaming of wanting to do all these things, and it's sort of, but then when that kind of seemed to lead to a dead end, or leads to a place where you're not fulfilled, like you're still in, there's still this emptiness that you're trying to look for. And we kind of went into all probably the self-helpy stuff, like all of the Eckhart, Power of Now and New Earth, like all those sort of more Eastern sort of overlap, all that stuff. But it always kind of felt like kind of half truths, or like you think it's it and it's not it. You're always sort of built up and let down sort of thing. But it it kind of all, it was a really strange time, but it kind of came together after COVID, which was just a strange time for everyone in general, I think. But then we sold up and decided, felt kind of compelled. We'd always talked about, like, we just love the Sunshine Coast. Like if we go for a holiday, particularly in winter here and all that stuff, like everyone sort of just jets, and you kind of like, we would always go up there towards, you know, the sunny coast, and loved it, and had always said, man, it just seems, it's like paradise up there. Like it feels like, I wonder if we should actually move, you know?
And just before you go into that, you've always had this kind of, these moments in your life where you felt like something was drawing you to do certain things, and there'd be times where it was so loud that you just couldn't ignore it.
Totally.
And that's what was happening with this. Like it happened with music.
Yeah.
And that was happening with this, because I remember during COVID you were saying, I feel like I've got to get out of here. Like we've got to get, like, moved. Something's calling me to the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, it's just so weird that you mentioned that, because I guess you probably were the one that got to experience that with me. Like we'll kind of get back into that later as we circle around or whatever. But yeah, that, like, the faith aspect when we were first doing music was probably those first encounters with that, where it felt like, man, something's, even though it makes no sense, it's ridiculous. Like you're writing raps in your bedroom, Australian hip hop's not a thing yet. Like it's all, but it was like something is there saying that you can do it, or that it's going to happen, or whatever, you know what I mean? So there has absolutely been these times where something, you know, felt like it's directing you or telling you to do something. And I always reflected on, anytime I listened to that, things always seemed to work out. And every time I didn't, life would just kind of unravel and you kind of end up in whatever. But this was one of those times where it did feel like I was sort of being compelled to go there, to go up to the Sunshine Coast. So then, yeah, we made that decision to just pack everything up, which was bold, to leave everyone behind, like family, friends. That got all this like beautiful sort of family and friends support network, all that stuff. And found a place like this Airbnb thing, just like randomly was like, oh, that one, you know. And then yeah, we decided to go up there for 6 months to just check it out. Obviously, we'd sold up, so kind of had this buffer where we could sort of just have some downtime with the family, and I'd started to sort of dabble in music and all that stuff again. And then it was really strange, like as we'd sort of touched on that feeling of just being, for some reason, being called to go up there. A bunch of things started to happen like in that lead up. So that kind of obviously then led down this path to eventually go into a church or whatever. It was the first thing that felt like it happened was that we started to meet up with all these different people that kind of like, you go to a park and the kids are playing and you kind of meet people and stuff like that. And sort of, because I think as even for you, like I'd always been so guarded to the idea of Christianity, like you're not even open to it. Like that's the whole thing, like, which is the messaging of the world now. It's like any version of spirituality except that. So I'd always felt that like part of the pitch of like the whole new agey self-help thing is like you're finding God, you're finding that, but without the dogma, like the old antiquated stuff. Oh, it's all new and spiritual. Like that's part of what I believe. Like I've got my own relationship with that. I don't need anything else, sort of thing. And then it felt like a few times in a row we'd like go to a park and you'd meet these people or you blah, blah, blah. And they're just young families and they were Christian. It was like really unusual. I was like, oh, I hadn't really experienced that before. And they seemed so normal. Like that was the big thing I took away from it, like normal, whatever that means. Because I think in your head, it's like that was part of one of the things I had. It's like, oh, Christians are all weirdos. That's like some whatever sort of caricature you have in your head of what you think they are. And sort of would meet these families that were also lovely and so helpful and you know what I mean? Like
didn't fit the mold.
Didn't fit this mold, or at least this projection I had in my head of who they would be. So that was like the first little domino to fall that was quite unusual. And then as we went up, it was like just before Easter. So I remembered having this conversation with my wife where I was like, what does Easter even mean? Like we celebrate Easter, we celebrate Christmas and all this stuff, but like it's just rubbish. It's like this commercialized garbage. It doesn't mean anything. Like it's a waste of our time, like blah, blah, blah. What does it even mean? And then I remember the Airbnb that we were staying at was like a second dwelling on the back of this big house, the people that owned it. And they were in the other house, the main house, obviously, and then they happened to be Christian. And I remembered that the lady from it came out and sort of said to me, and my wife was like, oh, you know, like just letting you know, like we're Christian and was just going to invite you to like a church service tomorrow. We're going to go for Easter. Like I know you probably wouldn't want to come or anything like that, but just felt compelled to sort of throw it out there and just say, you know, if you wanted to go. And then like me and my wife just laughed because I was like, that's so weird. Like we were just talking about that. And suddenly was sort of like, man, do you want to go? Like that's, which I would never say in a million years. But for some reason just felt like, that maybe we'll take the kids. Like that'll be kind of fun or whatever. And then we decided to go. And then it was that next day, I remember we went with sort of arrived, and I was probably still cynical about what the whole experience would sort of be. And I remember as soon as we walked in, like straight away, there was like all these families would sort of come up, like sort of, you know, someone might come up and the guy's like, oh, hi, how you going? My name's this, like, this is my wife, this is my children, blah, blah, blah. And it was like unnerving because I'd like grown up like North Side Melbourne, like real full Marxist vibes where it's like, I feel like people don't even look each other in the eye anymore. Like it's intense, man. So that I found that like to be so
confronting,
almost unnerving. Because I liken it like the feeling. It felt like really. I remember having the feeling. It felt like coming home. It was like such a strange emotion where I suddenly felt like all the cynical part of my brain that would usually be judging everyone and all this stuff, it sort of started to fall away because it was like so welcoming. There was all these like lovely people and you sort of suddenly felt like
at ease
or something like that, which was just like really unusual. And then, yeah, they said like the service is starting, blah, blah, blah. So we'll go in. And then as we went to walk in, you know, there's like all this music and the choir singing and stuff. And we just like, the moment we walked in the door, I just started like bawling my eyes out and it was just like overwhelming, man. Like I just started to like, I was just like losing the plot.
And in that moment, what did you think was happening?
Well, so it took a second because like I just started to like break down like to the point where I couldn't, and that's the same thing. Usually there'd be something in me that's like holding it all together sort of thing, but it was like I couldn't. Like it just kept happening, right? And then my wife's like, "Are you all right? Like and I was just like, I don't know what is happening right now. Like I can't." And it was just like, it was bizarre, bro. Like I just started to just bawl my eyes out and just went into this state of like, it's just like bliss, like overwhelming love sort of. It was like the most overwhelming feeling ever, man. Like having this encounter sort of thing where you're just like, but I couldn't stop it, man. Like it was so full on. And then
like ecstasy kind of thing, like actual ecstasy.
Yeah, like the real thing. That's right. So kind of like when we'd had drugs, you have these artificial versions of it. It was like finding the real thing. And then, man, I was a mess. Like this beautiful music was all playing, and I was just like, I couldn't really, but felt safe at the same time. Like usually you'd be like, man, everyone's judging me. What am I doing? Like, but I couldn't stop it, man. Like it was just like,
you just let go.
You just let go. And that's what it felt like, man. It felt like that 10 or 20 years of like all that weight, all that stuff you've been carrying that you could just never seem to, every other avenue, everything I was trying to do to like solve this thing and fix it and get blah, blah, blah. All that just started falling away, man. And like I couldn't put it back together. And then the pastor like got up and he started sort of doing this sermon, and it just felt like he was just spitting bars, man. Like, so even then which now that you've gone to church and that, I feel like you would understand that feeling. You know, sometimes when it feels like the pastor is actually just like, or God is like actually talking like directly to you sort of thing. Like you're like, oh, you're meant to be there that time. It was weird, man. So even then, like these things it was like these waves of like revelation as he was speaking or whatever.
And can you remember what they were?
Most of it's a blur. Like I remember one of them, which was just a bar anyway, was he was sort of talking about how, because it was Easter, which is, I guess, it's all about the resurrection of Christ. And it's like he was talking about our tendency as humans is to try and put God in a box. So you want to reduce the infinite to the finite. You want to try and say, I put God in this box. This is what he is, sort of thing, which you can't do. And he's like, Jesus is the literal representation of that, where they tried to put him in a box. They tried to put him in a tomb, but he couldn't be contained. It was just like haymakers, bro. Like I was like, whoa. But it was sort of talking about a lot of this stuff that I think, yeah, it was much more concrete to the airy-fairy version of spirituality that I think I had before. And you're happy to just rest in that, because then there is nothing. It's sort of more ambiguous. It can be what you want it to be. It's like that's the modern version of everything. That's the relativism we now live in. So there was a bunch of those things, man, that were just like hitting me over the head. And I was a mess like the whole time.
So even during the sermon,
it kept happening.
You would just
it would come and go. Like I'd feel like I've like kind of got it together. And then he'd say some other thing, man, that would just like hit through, and I'd just start happening. I was like, I don't know what's going on, man. It was just crazy, bro. And yeah, so it was so overwhelming. And then I'd like, yeah, obviously then you start to look back at things and you see all these dominoes, these things, and it feels like now we would look at it as like God's like leading you there. So this arrogance of thinking that I'm in control of my life. I started to feel like, man, he's been there the whole time. Anyway, we'll get into that more. But yeah, it was bizarre. And then it kind of got to the end of the service. It was packed because it's like an Easter service. And yeah, it was like right at the end. Then they're like, oh, you know, we don't usually do this, but we feel this sense to just say like, if anybody wants to be baptized today, like we're going to have that at the end and all this stuff. And then I like turned to my wife and was like, I know this sounds really insane and ridiculous, but I feel like I'm meant to be baptized right now. And she's like, well, you know, what do you mean? And I was like, I think this is what I've always been looking for, and I cannot believe it's been like right here in front of my face the whole time.
Wow.
And I got baptized on the day.
Dude.
And then we started to go to church every week, but also I would start to meet with the pastor every week, because I went and chatted to him and he was like a bit, I think, blown away by what he'd sort of witnessed and stuff. And then we would chat and I would go, the biggest thing I took away was that as we'd catch up, I would kind of go there and like share with him, right, these little things that were like these little jewels or little bits of insight or wisdom that it feels like you've managed to extract from like 30 plus years of suffering in the world. And every time I'd share it with him, he would just be like, oh yeah, that's like when Jesus said this. Oh yeah, that's like when Jesus said that. Oh yeah, that's in, and he'd just always refer to scripture in like parts of the Bible or something. And it was just like mind blowing, man. So then, and it made me kind of be like, oh, no wonder they don't want anybody to read this, man. Like no wonder they don't want you to know this, because it's literally like it's just giving you, it's explaining the sort of, this life itself and how to function within it and where all of the issues lie and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, we just started to meet up all the time, and I was sort of just blown away by the profundity of it all. And just, I think that there's this arrogance that comes with like this idea of looking back at it, like, oh, it's this old, silly, mystical, antiquated rubbish, and now we're so cutting edge and so new age, and just realizing how, bro, so much of it is just like, not only is it timeless, but like most of the new stuff we're taught or that people expound on or whatever is just that reworded. And just like, so then I started to sort of really reflect on that, like a lot of it's just repackaged. People just take little bastardized versions of it, and that becomes a movement and this and that, which we can obviously get into. But yeah, it transformed my whole life, man. Like all of that stuff, which you would have experienced living with me through that darkness and that torment. It felt like I was sort of just delivered from it in an instant. So, and liberated from it, and it was just gone, which I couldn't. Yeah,
which is wild, because it was like the thing that blows my mind about it all is that you weren't exploring it.
No, that's right too.
You know, like you went there just out of feeling compelled to, and then getting baptized, and also the profound effect that it had on the church there, where like everyone was crying because of what happened with you, and how that's had a ripple effect with their church.
Yeah, it's grown. Yeah, it's crazy.
And then you've come back to Melbourne, and we're just like born again.
Yeah.
Which was the first time I've actually gone, oh, so it actually is like a rebirth, like you become.
Well, that made me understand that term. I'm like, oh, this is what it means, because your identity shifts. So that the self dies, and then you identify in Christ, and then you're born again. So same thing, we'll elaborate on all of that. But that was one of the things that he said. So when we first spoke and he started to explain the Trinity, and then so first you start to learn all the teachings and all these things, but also the fact that then when Christ died, he's like, I got to go, sort of thing. He says, don't worry, it's going to be a benefit to you, because I'm going to send someone like me. I'm going to send the Holy Spirit. And he's like, that thing you're interacting with, that's the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, that's the only version of life I've heard talk about. I'm like, that's what I've always felt like. There's something, man, there's something else that's like talking to me, which you would say, gut feeling, intuition. I'm like, there's this thing, and he calls it that. It's like the comforter, it's the helper. He's there, he's to guide you. And I'm like, man, that's exactly it. Like anytime I've listened to that, even if it's illogical, irrational, which it often is, sometimes it seems stupid. So your mind comes in and goes, oh, no, but let's be calculated. It's like, I know this doesn't make sense, but if you just trust it, how often that, which even that leads into like when we're talking about, Christ walking on water sort of thing, or when he calls Peter out. Like that's bars, because like Peter wants to walk out on water and he's like, I can't. He's like, yeah, but trust me, just come out and I'll catch you, sort of thing. There's meaning in everything, like every little parable, every little, story, every little analogy. I'm like, that's exactly what it's felt like, because I would experience, I think that was even what I was sharing with him at the time. The pastor, shout out to Josh Bradford, by the way, he was a legend. It was like, I said, that's what it felt like going on stage, because the terror that I felt, this torment that I felt, it was excruciating, man. And every time I listened to it, it would just destroy me. So there's thousands of people, and it would just, and I'd go out there through that lens of the devil, where you kind of like, it's unbearable. But there was times when I would be able to kind of observe it, sit in the absolute, just excruciating, just suffer in it, but just trust. And then when you walk out, it would all fall away. And then it would become bliss. And I was like, that's the perfect analogy of it, where it's like, that's what he's saying. He's like, just step off. I know it doesn't make any sense, but just do it. And then obviously then when Peter, like, even to go further into that story, it's like then he starts to look at the waves, he starts to get scared, and he starts to sink. And then Christ is like, it's all right. And he's still there for you, pulls you back out again, which is just bars, because that's the same thing. So you look at the surrounds, you look at the world, you look at the fear, and then you're like, oh, it's swallowing me. You start to sink, but it's like he's always there to lift you back out. So it started to become all of that, man. I couldn't believe it. I also just started to probably understand the idea of like anchoring in. So when every Sunday, like when we would go back, it would sort of anchor the family because it becomes a family. Like all the people at the church, there was this community, and it was like slowing down. So you put your eyes on the King, obviously, but more that like it's getting your priorities in order, and that's the whole importance of the Sabbath, or like even that's which then they'll talk about, like when there's the illustration of like creating the world in 7 days, like God rests on the seventh day. It's because it's like he's giving you a template of how to live your life. So everything that you might want to ridicule or make into some overly simplistic thing, there's often the deepest like truth or revelation in why that's there. Because once you implement that, because as you're similar to me, where we're probably like pretty manic people, like quite obsessive, all or nothing. So it's very easy to become a workaholic. So you just don't stop. So you work every day. And then we live in a culture now where it's like no days off, work, like get the whatever. So it's kind of like, it's actually really unhealthy. There's imbalance there, and everything kind of would fall away. Whereas once we like would take that day, you anchor yourself back in, you shift your focus away from the world onto God, sort of thing. It centers everything, and you restructure. You probably reflect on the week. How did we do? It's so important, man. It started to transform everything.
And I saw John Tyson, who's this Australian pastor in New York. He was like saying that a lot of Christians think that church is like the ball game, but church is like the huddle before the ball game. And then when you're out in the world, that's the game. You know what I mean? It like gets you ready for everything, like putting God at the center.
Yeah. But then I guess, and then after that was, once we decided, so we got to around 6 months, we loved it there. And my wife really wanted to stay. Like it was like we'd started to make all these new friends and community, and was like, man, we could so stay here. But then I felt once again then compelled to come back.
See, that's another testament to the obedience, because that would have been tough. Like being up there in paradise, the kids they
were loving it,
adjusted, all of that. And then
we loved this church, all this community. So we started to feel like this could feel like home. But I felt this sense of like, I think we're meant to go back. And then it was, even that was just, and this is the thing, man. So when we talk about like the people pleaser thing, because that's what I'd always wrestled with, and same for you, it's like the biggest people pleaser thing is that you want to be liked. So therefore you don't want to rock the boat. You just try and just float around and be who people need you to be, so you can, So I really laughed when I was like, bro, I felt liberated from that, but I was like, I'm about to go back to Melbourne to all of our friends, all of our family. None of them are Christian, obviously. Like it's this makeshift friends. Like we've all got different beliefs, different things, like different versions of spirituality. Like we'd been kind of exploring the homeschool thing. Like that's all really alternative. So all of that, I was like, oh, this is so funny, man, that I'm now about to go back and see everyone and actually tell them of what's happened, and knowing that the way that I would have reacted, or that the world would react, is that they think you're a wacko or whatever, you know what I mean?
And you would normally in the past, you would have fallen into that where you would hide the truth, just to keep the peace. Like let's keep the peace.
Yeah.
But now you were so bold when you came back,
Yeah, you just don't care. And it was sort of, and that's why even speaking to that, like I'm really curious, because it was like, what was that then like for you? Because that would have been really interesting, because I couldn't help it. But you start at first, I guess that would have been probably pretty jarring, yeah?
Yeah, it was jarring in the sense that I thought that anyone who was like became consumed and like a Jesus freak kind of thing, that they were crazy. Like it was that was the narrative in my head. It was like, oh, here we go. Someone's crazy. They've lost their mind or something. But because it was you, and because I trust you and love you so much, it was like I could see that it was, it was working magic in your life. It was so transformative. So we would have these really deep discussions about it. But I was very much like, good for you, but not for me kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had that resistance to it. And that cynicism took a long time to to get rid of. I think a lot of people would probably see me just proclaiming it like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been since you came back, which would have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That's been since I've been exploring it since then, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's taken till now for that wall to come down completely.
Yeah. But it's like and that's why even Christ himself speaks to that. It's like, you know a person by their fruits, sort of thing. And sometimes it feels like the fruits speak louder than the words in the end, which I know for you that kind of hit a point where it's like, and even then you learn that too, because it's like, it's not like you have to come and like necessarily like hit people over the head with it. It's more just like once they see change, they see the fruits of it in your life, then it starts to make people more and more curious, because particularly the more that more deeply someone knows you, the more that they see that profound sort of shift, and it and all of the preconceptions that they have, all of that really, exaggerated, that caricature version of what they think, which is, we've spoken about that with the belief system thing. Like you think you know something you got no idea about. So it's that stuff starts to fall away when you see, oh, maybe it's not what I thought it was, which was the biggest thing for me. And even when you were talking about I wasn't looking for it, I guess subconsciously you are, you just don't know where it is.
Yeah.
And then I guess
you were looking for it in other places, kind of thing.
Looking for it everywhere else except there.
Yeah.
And then it made me understand Christianity because of the grace element. So for most people, like even a lot of people maybe watching at home or any of that stuff, it's like we live in the age of relativism. So then people, it's just like, oh, they're all the same, or oh, that works for you, or they all lead to heaven, or all this sort of stuff. But it's like, well, no, they don't, because every single thing has a different pitch. So you're like, and what I noticed though was that, oh, hang on our stage, the things we've gone through and through the people I know, the relativism does apply, because most of the other things are the same. Like the pitch is the same, but with different wording. So like with a friend who's like Muslim, they talk about like within Islam, it's kind of like Allah's going to lay out all of these laws and these things that you need to follow. And if you kind of hopefully follow them well enough and do that well enough, you'll be led into heaven. And then I've got like another friend that's very Eastern and Buddhist, and it'd be kind of like, I've got to do all of the meditation and do all of this sort of striving. And then hopefully one day, if I do that well enough, I'll reach enlightenment. And then like another friend that's still into the new age thing, it's kind of like, okay, I'll do all the positive thinking, I'll do all that stuff, and then I'm going to manifest all the things that I want, and then I'm going to be happy. It's kind of like always the same pitch, but it's all merit driven.
It's all performance, and you've got to earn your way.
Me doing that, whereas Christianity is not that. It's like the polar opposite. It's actually counterintuitive to all of that, because it's like God is perfect. Nothing we ever do will ever be enough to be perfect. So it's actually him extending an olive branch. Like when Christ has come down to die for us in our place, because the penalty for sin is death. It's like he's taken on the weight of that for you, and instead you just have to accept the gift of what he's done for you. And the moment you do, which is the moment that you then, which I think for us, the arduous journey there was so beautiful, because it illustrates that, is like trying to do it myself never worked. So getting to a point where I've exhausted that, I'm giving up. I'm essentially laying down my armor, my pride, because I'm like, I can't do it on my own. You're finally willing to accept. And that's what he is. He's a savior. He's standing in your place. He's taking the wrath of that punishment for you. But also that then when you accept the gift, it's a grace gift that you don't deserve. Once that happens, that's what transforms you, because then you get out of the way. Like you die to that self, because it doesn't mean anything anymore, and you put it in something higher, sort of thing.
It's like the whole thing of submission and surrender, like, well, I remember when I used to talk about God and stuff, about why would you surrender to God? Like, why would you submit to God? I didn't know what that meant. I always thought that was like, if you submit or surrender, you lose the battle kind of thing.
Right.
Never realized that it's actually just giving it all to him. Like you're submitting to him. And the grace element too, what you said is like, I never got that. I always thought it was like, I thought grace was related to movement, or I don't know. I didn't know that grace was undeserved kindness. Like he's showing us mercy that we don't deserve.
Yes.
And then that becomes the fuel for the rest of our life. We're saved by that. It's the reason we wake up in the morning, and it comes with wisdom and knowledge and just completely transforms us. And that's what happened with you. It was like the grace element.
Well,
Bang.
I got it because I didn't deserve it. So as you're saying, didn't even know that's what I was looking for. Looked at all of these events that led me there. I was like, then I've reflected, I'm like, why did I suddenly think we need to go to the Sunshine Coast? Why did we stay in that Airbnb? Why did I do this? Why did it all align on this one thing? You know what I mean? Like it becomes ridiculous at a certain point.
There's no coincidence there. This is 100% like, that's what I love about your story, is that it was divine intervention. It was like you searching in the world, trying to find your place, and him going, okay, that's enough, mate.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so powerful, man.
Yeah, it was hectic, man. And then I think that's it. So because then you're kind of giving it over to something, that's the idea. It's like he's the one that's created you. So then, and that's the whole Christian thing. It's like even from Genesis, it's pointing out that he's like saying, here it is. I made this for you. You can have everything. It's perfect. But the human condition, that's what, you know, Adam in the Hebrew means humanity. It's trying to illustrate that the human condition is that we say, no, I know better. I'll do it my way. I'll manifest my life. I know what I want. I know what I think. Me. It's all, and there's always self in all of the other stuff. So in that, it's like relinquishing it over and saying, oh, I'm actually starting to think you made me, like, you know what's best for me. And then that's why when you get into, then I think it was so powerful for me that I was like ready to then say, it probably is some old antiquated. I'm probably going to have to go into denial with some stuff because it's probably a bit silly, but it seems to work. But whereas then when you go into the historicity of it all and actually study it, that's why it's so dope with some of the best skeptics or like super intelligent people that have like gone in to debunk it, and then on the other side they come out Christian, because it's like that's what's so fascinating. Like it's actually, there's a point where it becomes harder to believe that some maniac just popped up randomly 2,000 years ago spouting the most godly wisdom that anyone's ever heard, just randomly, and then sort of and out of that has birthed this movement sort of thing, which we can go into all the depths of that because it's so dope. But it was like once I started to then journey down that path, it strengthened it even more because it was like, oh man, which you kind of would have experienced yourself. It's like, yeah, that's the journey. And I guess the other grace element is like thinking of all of our years, not only where you're technically living in rebellion, but how in a lot of cases you're speaking ill of it, you're mocking it, you're making fun of it. And instead of him, and that's even like Christ himself. So when he's like, he's perfect, right? He's the sinless one. And there he is carrying the cross off to his crucifixion, and everyone's spitting on him and
he's
bashing
dying.
him and yelling at him and stabbing him and cursing him and the most untold evil, and he doesn't deserve any of it. And he takes it all on board, and then he's like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. So of anyone who deserves to be like, I've had enough with you guys and just want to kill it, he still just takes it all on board and feels no...
To have forgiveness as the first reaction to people killing you is like the most beautiful thing ever.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were spitting on him and mocking him, and like you think about that, like at Easter I was thinking about this, I was like getting so angry, thinking how could they do that? How could they do that? And then you realize that that's us.
Yeah,
like
we were doing the same thing.
The exact same thing. And he died for us. Like just like he died for them. And that was, all of it was out of love.
Yeah. And that's when you experience that, then it changes you. But I guess that was kind of the journey, man, like coming back and then gradually kind of reconnecting with everyone and just kind of sinking back into life here, and then like bought another place, and then it gradually, it felt like, I think you even spoke to that too, but it was like even then coming back, it felt like, I felt so drawn to want to just go back into music. I was like, I feel like I'm meant to kind of explore all this stuff again, but it also felt like, no, I think there's a season here where I need to actually work and do all these things and create stability and foundation and those things at home. Because I probably, through a lot of those vacant years, you kind of lost in the abyss a bit. So it kind of like felt like there was a bunch of growth that needed to take place. And then eventually this other, you maybe start to get pulled back in a direction that you meant to go.
That was really interesting too, because in the past you were always saying, yeah, I'm nearly there with the music, like I'm nearly there, but you could tell that you didn't quite believe it. And then I remember this was the first time that you were like, dude, I actually don't think music is for me right now. I think he's calling me to provide for my family and actually work and do that stuff. And that blew my mind, man. That shift in itself was quite eye-opening.
Yeah. And it's kind of wild because I guess through that, it was funny to come back because I felt like with numerous friends, it was kind of the first reaction was probably to mock it, make fun of it, all that stuff, which I'm like, man, I get all that. But then over time, as you kind of have these deeper discussions and probably some more insightful like revelation or things come from it, and then they see the fruits of it, then we've seen sort of numerous friends like gradually and family members that kind of start to come to Christ and kind of see, yeah, there's a lot of, because that's the coolest thing about what Christ claimed. Like it's absolute. That's what's so dope about it. It's not relativistic. It's not that. It's kind of like, Buddha's like, I found a way, but it's like, he's like, no, I'm the way. And that's like even C.S. Lewis, like speaking to that. It's like either the best thing about Christ is there is no gray area. It's like either he's a deranged lunatic, in which case Christians should be pitied most of all, because you don't get to pick and choose and do the human thing of like, oh, but he had some good teachings. I'll take some of that and I'll put it in my melting pot and I'll keep doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's like either that or even more terrifying, he's actually who he said he was and he's the Son of God, he's God incarnate. And that's when he's like, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Once you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. He's like, nobody else is doing these teachings where they're talking about himself. Like the whole time he's like, yeah, it's wild, man.
And there is a lot of that where in today's world is like every path, every spiritual practice is a path to God. And like people say Jesus was just a spiritual teacher, but it's like, well, if you listen to what he says and you believe he was a good spiritual teacher, then how can you go against his claims?
That's right. You can't do that because it's not vague. It's not ambiguous. It's like it actually leaves you with like either you follow him or you don't. That's what's so dope.
When you came back, it's like it was really trippy because you were just like full of knowledge about the scripture, about the story, all theology. A lot of it was just like, it seemed like it was really quick, man. Like it was a sudden shift and you just knew a lot of stuff and you were just laying it all out. Was that like because you'd spent time in it? Like were you dedicating a lot of time to scripture, or was that when you were catching up with what's his name?
I think some of it would have been that. Like I guess that's the Holy Spirit anyway. So when we're talking about that, always sort of flows from him. The more connected you are, it sort of draws upon that stuff. But yeah, I think that was the big thing I was noticing with when I would meet with the pastor is each time I would share any of these experiences or insights that it felt like had come from all of the tumultuous roller coaster through life, was that it always would be some scriptural thing that would just speak directly to it. And then so that started to be like, man, this is hectic that there's this much. So even I was saying there was like, and this is where I don't know if we can get Thomas to get the exact scripture. That'd be so dope to be like, Matthew 6:4, blah, 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 and just start spitting bars. But the first one he said was like, in Matthew was like, seek first the kingdom of heaven and all else will be added to you or whatever. And I was like, that's exactly it, man. Because that's everything you do from the world, you do it in reverse. I was like, get all of the stuff. Once you got all the stuff, I'll be happy and then I'll go and do that. Where it's like, no. It's counterintuitive, but God's saying, no, come to me first. I'll take care of all of that stuff for you. And that's what it felt like. Anytime I'm like, the deep irony was that as soon as you actually focus on the right things in the right order, he does provide all of that stuff anyway, but you're not looking to any of it for any value. You're not trying to find your worth or those things in all this superficial stuff. It was like, so that's what it felt like. There was often so many of these different issues or things you face. There's like direct just bizarre, like scriptural wisdom that I just never expected to be there.
It was Matthew 6:33.
There you go.
But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Yeah.
In the Sermon on the Mount.
A lot of the criticism that I've had
Yes.
is that I was addicted to that hedonistic lifestyle. Then when I got out of rehab, I swapped that pretty much for self-help and health and wellness and becoming the best version of myself, all of that. But now a lot of the criticism is that I'm simply just finding my new obsession.
Right.
This is my new addiction. Do you think, how would you answer that, and how would you reply to that, and is that applying to you too?
I guess the profound difference with this is like all of those other quote unquote addictions, right? They're all generally very destructive. They're often very selfish, and it's generally, probably pretty hedonistic. So it's going to be like what? There's going to be all the depraved things, whether it's going to be alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling. So they're things that they're often pretty destructive either to you or to the people involved or to society as a whole, that's for sure. Then the self-help thing feels like a good version of that. But
it's not destructive.
Yeah, but it's still self. It's always self. So the irony of like if you become deeply addicted, let's say, to Christ or Christianity, and you actually follow what he's telling you to do, it's the one thing where you're not first. You put yourself last, and that's the other bars involved with Christ. It's like, so at the end, before he's going to go, he gets down and washes all the disciples' feet, and they're like, "You can't do this. You're God. Like you're our master." And he's like, "No. Like if I do this for you, then it's showing that like you have to do this for each other," sort of thing. So he assumes a role of servitude, which in no other form of religion would that be the case. Not only is he born into the poorest part, and he goes and just works a normal job. It's like, even that they talk about, like even in the illustration of like the Garden of Eden, the humans are actually, Adam and Eve, they're meant to tend to the land. Like work is built into the philosophy. It's not looked down upon as if you're scum and the gods are up here or any sort of stuff. It's like he's come down, walked among us, and he's put himself at the most lowly point, and then he assumes a role of servitude. So it's like, if you become more like Christ, then what you're going to in turn do is become addicted to Christ and start wanting to serve and help people. So the irony is that it actually, the more addicted you become, the more beneficial it is to society, because everything that you're doing is not about self. It's actually about self-sacrifice for the most part, real Christianity. So it's like, and what, you're going to forgive people who offend you and hurt you and trespass against you. It's like, it births, that's why it's so beautiful. And there's always been this, it's demonized in the modern world, but it's like if you focus on those characteristics, there's always been a charitable aspect. There's always been these things built into Christianity because it's a byproduct of the whole belief system. That was probably one of the other things I feel like I noticed. It was the first time it was kind of all encompassing to all of these other, when it was more Eastern, it was like, oh, I'm going to go away. It's about self. It's my journey. And that's the whole thing. So, you can become this really enlightened version of, someone with their meditation in that culture. And then you might see someone dying next to you and you're kind of like, oh, that's their karma. That's not my problem, sort of thing. Where in Christianity, you don't get to do that. There's a duty for you to help the poor and to help people that are sick and help. So it's sort of, it's like a reverse model. It's like an upside down version of kind of the hierarchy that you would usually think. You assume the lowly role and you start trying to be selfless and lift everyone else up is kind of, a total reversal. So I feel like in some ways you can't really characterize it in the same way. If maybe we're manic and that's kind of our nature, it's probably the one thing that when it's done correctly is that instead of it being self-indulgent, self-destructive, and exploited, it's the opposite. It actually, and you would notice that yourself, because I feel like in the past, we would have always felt like the way you would deal with things would be to become a recluse, to want to hide away. Whereas as you've gone through this experience, it's visible to me, but you would notice the same thing, wouldn't you? It feels like it's connected you to community. Now you've got friends everywhere. There's people you meet with every week. It's brought you out of the recluse, it's the total opposite. And that's the born again thing we speak about. It's like, that's what it does. It inverts all these things. It sort of delivers you from things that no matter, I could have done years of CBT with the psychologist and talking about in China. It always felt like the mind, the thing that created the psychological issues or trauma, then I'm trying to use the same mind to go in and tinker around and change it and things. It never got anywhere. It just goes round and it reshapes. You go round and round in circles. This was the only thing where it was sort of transcendent, and it seemed to just bang. It just went through, and I didn't feel like I had any part in it, which was what was so wild. And why then you want to, once it happens, because I had preconceptions that were wrong. I ended up there without meaning to. And then what it did to me, then you want to tell everyone because you're like,
this is it.
This is the thing. And because I've gone through so many things on the way there, and you see someone in all these different stages, you want to say to them like, oh man, I know what you're looking for. I've found it. And that's probably what I then experienced with you, was like really fascinating, because then through that, I guess you then had a life coach, which, as we're saying, in the modern world, that's fine, like any of those things. And it was really interesting because then he started to introduce the idea to you of praying, which then in different language, because I remember at one point we spoke after that and you were like, man, it's so interesting, man. Like my coach keeps sort of mentioning things that are like real similar to what you're saying, but because the language I was using is we're all conditioned to reject. It almost was a way of just gently stepping you into the ideas, and you could see, oh, this kind of works or whatever. Like that'd be kind of interesting for you to talk about.
Yeah, it's like you can see how for me, I was so closed off to it that was the path for me to end up getting there.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful, man.
Yeah. And then it sort of, and as we said, then you might call it source, or you might call it, these other names, these other words that people use to talk about the same thing.
Yeah, because it's the same with the New Age stuff too. Like if you say sin to anyone, it comes with so much baggage attached to it. Same with God, like what
just even those
source
words,
or universe or all that.
Yeah,
you say anything like that, it has this loaded feel to it, where it's like in Eckhart's books and that, he was pretty much talking about sin just being the ego.
Yep.
And like the answer to that was the root of all suffering, was the ego, and that the answer to all of that suffering was presence, to be just empty-minded, to just be still. But it's like it was just a fraction off the mark, because it was like the root of all suffering is sin, and the answer is presence with God.
Yeah, because the thing I found with the Eckhart thing, that it really helped, because it helped me sort of see the ego or the pain body, these words he would use, which was probably the first step of like going out before the show, was like I could start to observe the dialogue and not identify with it. It would still be excruciating. But the biggest thing with that, and the whole it's self-help, first of all, but it was like there's no identity at all in it then. You're just left in this abyss. So you're floating in presence, so you feel nothing, resist nothing. It's like, oh, if any evil, any things happen, that doesn't matter, just kind of go with the flow, just get thrown around in the washing machine. That's what it felt like. It leads to the world where you're kind of sitting on the park bench and you're kind of in your happy little bliss, but nothing means anything. It's still this overlap with nihilism of like, nothing means anything though, just be present. And it always felt like this torment was still there. Whereas like,
I've noticed that with meditation, where like in the past it would be like if you meditate, you would be able to empty your mind and reset and all this stuff. And I felt like I was doing it, but never quite, it just didn't feel like I was getting it like everyone else could. And then when you are in a state of worship, like, and you're meditating on God, like you're meditating on everything he's done for us and all that, then you feel this just overwhelming sense of peace and joy that surpasses all understanding. It's like you're unified with God. You're getting a taste of his presence that wouldn't even match the real thing. Yeah. But that's what I feel like meditation was supposed to be doing, like anchored in and just charged up. I think when we were talking about the obsession thing, like if I look at the person that I was before Jesus and now the person I am now, there's literally not one aspect that has been transformed for the worst. Like it's all been for the better.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be probably negative is that I don't fit the mold that people want me to be in.
Yeah, that's the world. And that's
the
why
only
even he's
thing.
even speaking to that though. He talks about how the world is going to hate you, but don't worry, they hated me first. So it's sort of like, and so everything that happens, that's what tripped me out, man, is that when you would then read it, he's already spoken about it. So this feeling that I had I felt crazy with like this he's like, I would have these encounters or this interaction with someone. And then you obviously knew me personally, like other people don't. So you'd experience those times when it's like that belief, we'd call it belief, came in. It was only when I was ever listening to that thing, it makes you feel like invincible or that you can do something that's impossible. Then he'd talk about it directly. So it's like as you're facing, and then even you would know with sin, it's because he's talking about the flesh. You know, we live in the world now where it's like, oh, follow your heart. And he's like, no, the heart is wicked. Like you need to be very, very careful, like with discernment, and the flesh is going to, earthly desire, selfish desire is not good. We're here now, we live in a world where they're like, oh, whatever your desire is, like, oh, that's who you are, follow that. And it's like, these are lies. They're dressed up. That's the Luciferian idea. It's like comes as the light bearer. It sounds good, but it's not. Like we've already lived through that shit enough times to be like, it sounds good on the front end. What does it look like over here? It's a lie. Like it leads you astray, sort of thing. Yeah, that was the biggest trip for me. How everything has, for the most part, just always been. He's already discussed it. He's already got passages. It's just talking about that.
It's interesting, man. I was hearing this pastor break it down. Like if any good manufacturer of any product gives you a handbook of how to operate that product, and that's exactly what scripture is.
That's bars. Because that's the whole thing. It's like he's created you and he's watching his creation go astray. Like, and that's kind of the free will aspect. It's like he's giving you the illustration at the front end. It's like he's made everything perfect. Here, you can have everything perfect, just don't do this. So he's given you like an out, and then the arrogance of kind of the way the human mind is that's tempted, and then that's the fall of man, and we live through that. So it's like really quickly, even with like having kids, they're the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life when you like watch your child born. You can't even explain it. But real quickly, you'll watch how selfish, how they'll lie, how they'll dob on each other, how they'll manipulate. And then that's just actually the human condition at work. It's evident. It's like kind of, you have to teach them, all right, sweetheart, like that's not how, we shouldn't do that. This is why. And you have to learn. So it's kind of like the idea of like God is trying to call you home. He's actually he's telling you to rise to the spirit, which is him. And you have to deny the flesh, which is the sinful aspect. You start to, until you actually get that, once it happens, you start to observe it in yourself where you're like, oh yeah, there's this thing that's like the flesh or this enemy is like pulling you away. It's pulling you back to the world, always trying to, and you have to actively turn away. Repentance is turning away from that, and how hard it is to do that. Like until you experience it, like it's, yeah.
You don't realize how much you do it till you stop. It's just like swearing. Like sin is the same thing in regards that you don't realize that you're so in it all the time. That when you try to stop, you're like, whoa, I'm doing this a lot, you know?
Yeah, the swearing one's hectic because it's like, as we've sort of said before, I don't know if it's just Aussie culture in general or then like having a slightly positive connotation to it, like in my own mind. But it's just so second nature that it's like, yeah, you catch yourself. It's hard to stop this habit, this like overflow.
Do you think you will?
Have to, man. Have to overcome
I've noticed
it.
you were really convicted by that scripture you were telling me about before, which I think is really cool.
What's that one? See, this is what I'm talking about. There's bars. Like it's in James. It's like James 3 something. Same thing. He's speaking about how like, you know, from a spring, like salt water and fresh water doesn't come from the same spring. And this is the problem with taming the tongue. It's like at the same, you know, vessel that you use to praise the Lord and everything holy, you then curse your fellow man and everything. And it's like, oh, that's it. It's like learning to try and mold it and shape it so that it's a tool for good rather than, but it feels like there's just constantly, bro, I feel like literally if we started to talk about any segment, you'd start to find, this is what's so hectic for people that obviously don't know anything about it. It's kind of like it blew my mind at how much there's always something for everything.
And what would you say to, because there's going to be a lot of people that watch this and will be like, damn, I'm so cut that PEZ is now a Jesus freak or that he's become Christian. Like, how could he and all that? Like,
I just love even calling it a Jesus freak. That's so dope because that's actually how your mind probably experiences it on the outside looking in. If someone just says that they're, oh, I'm Christian, I actually believe it. But this is why it's getting so dope, man, because I feel like when we were younger, all the new atheist movement, you're watching like Christopher Hitchens like debate some fundamentalist high school professor or something, and it's like, oh, it's chalk and cheese. It's like either some old idiot or the new cutting edge science sort of thing. You know, it's a no brainer. Whereas then once you hear him speak to like John Lennox or someone who's like just mind boggling, or even the Alex O'Connor thing at the moment when he talks to John Lennox, like when it's the highest level intellectual discussion and you real great Christian apologists, it started to be like the atheism thing started to kind of like fall away a little bit because it does leave some real issues. It was fine when it's just attacking things and doesn't have to defend it. Not only is a lot of the scientific breakthrough starting to really support and point towards, it's starting to become pretty difficult to say there's not some, even Dawkins is at the point where he's like, you're just not allowed to use the word before when talking about before the inception of the universe. Like, we're just going to pretend that that's not there. We're going to start from here. They're like, but it's like, you can't, because that's the whole thing. Like, if the whole universe can be reduced into the size of a pinhead and spontaneously erupts into everything, the complexity of everything that we now see, not to mention the fine tuning of the universe that has to be just right for life to exist. Like, yeah, it gets really deep and those discussions become really fascinating. And then the main thing was just that it works. It works, bro.
Mate.
The real thing, and this is that I think people throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we've grown up in an era where like, if you ask someone about Christianity, what are they going to talk about? Pedophilia and maybe rorting people for money. I feel like it probably the two things that's what, and then
their points too.
Yeah, and that's right. Obviously those people deserve what's coming for them sort of thing, but it's like, that's the reductive thing. So it's like you're conditioned to be like, that's it, put it in a box, and they don't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
So there's human error everywhere, and that's why you're kind of getting back to the point of like, what's the real thing? What's it really about? And there's kind of, even then we've probably come to sort of Protestantism, and then now I'm really fascinated just by church history in general, kind of like, because it feels like you're throwing out 1600 years of church history that I'm like, well, I'm just fascinated. We feel like we're still learning, and that humility is kind of a huge part of it. You don't come in and just like go, I know everything. And it's like, it's a journey. It's so deep. It's so fascinating. But as I would say, for people that are observing, the start of it is just observing the fall of the world around us. So that was always the pitch. Oh, we don't need God. We don't need anything, because you're living on the fumes of Western civilization and the Christian heritage that we've all inherited. All of these things that had been created, it's like, oh, they're just there. They're not there, man. Like, once you remove all that and everything devolves back into its state, it becomes really clear what life's like without these things, and how you can't just sort of superficially impose them, into society. It actually comes from the inside out, which is even when they in those first waves of Christianity, like I feel like Tim Keller was talking about that when like, was it like the Black Plague and everything like that? They couldn't understand because everyone was so frightened, and they're like, if you just touch this, you might be dead. And all the Christians were the ones that were going in
to treat them,
to treat everyone.
Yeah.
And they might die. And they're like, well, if that's what happens, that's fine. I'm going, to be with the Lord anyway. They'd all sacrifice themselves, and they couldn't understand that. Like, we want to get rid of them, but they're so selfless. They're giving themselves to the poor. Even our own people aren't looking after, the Romans might have talked about that. Like, they're not, our people won't even look after the poor. And then these Christians are coming in and sort of tending to them and doing these things that don't make any sense. It's so counterintuitive to the...
Man, that's what's blown my mind about it is I was expecting a very judgmental group of people when I was going to church. And I experienced some of that when I was looking for a church in the early days when I was going to a different one. But then when I landed at City on a Hill, it's like the warmth and the love that everyone shows and the grace that they show. It's like it's not what I expected at all. It is all just very much based in love. Most people there are very Christ-like, and you can see when people have, like Ash, when people have that Jesus, like they're almost glowing. They're at peace. There's something almost like, is this genuine or not? Because like most people aren't this charming, but genuine at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have this peace about them.
That's the biggest thing, The peace is like, because it doesn't come from the world. And that's what's weird about it. When you find people that it's the real thing, you're like, you can see it. Something's different. How are you getting that? And I feel like that's what eventually then makes people go more and more curious.
Matthew 5:6, where it says, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I feel like that's what you were doing, you know what I mean? Like you were coming on very boldly proclaiming it, but then when the light within you was shining so brightly that I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame, you know what I mean?
What is that? Yeah. And that's kind of cool because it feels like obviously you learn to be more tactful with like, just anyway, because it's like, I think you're so excited at the front end that you do just want to shout it from the rooftop sort of thing. And you start to learn that like, oh, it's not my job to do that anyway. Like God works in his own way. And when there's space in a conversation, sometimes something comes out, that's fine. But more than anything, it's exactly that. Like if you just actually really live it and it's the real thing and you lead by example, then it speaks for itself. And that's what's different and super cool about it. Have you got something over there you're trying to chime in with, babe? I don't want to be cutting you off.
No, I'm just listening.
Okay,
I looked
cool.
at that verse in James, but that was a while back. I've been Googling all sorts of stuff about a great schism and...
That's right. Well, that man, we got to go into those things.
I feel like that's got to be another episode, all these things. Though.
It does.
Do you guys want me to hit you with some questions as we...
Oh, yeah, good idea.
We could, yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, Matt, you sort of asked one that I was going to ask, which was like, like this has been an episode that hasn't mentioned your careers or music at all. Like, what do you want people who listen to the pod and fans and all that to expect from, maybe we'll just focus on this podcast in future? Where are you hoping to bring faith and your journeys into it?
Well, I guess it's something that's going to unfold kind of naturally, but I think part of even just starting to, this has been a huge thing for like Six and I being brought together. It always felt like, because he's so bold, so this is where it was like, I'm very private. I think the faith aspect for me, I mean, it was bold enough for me to just come home to Melbourne and be honest with like you, with all my closest friends and family. That was even in itself was, as you said, probably different. I wouldn't normally do that. But then I think probably working towards building up the courage where you might then actually be more open in a public setting, that would take me a while. If at all, whereas because you don't muck around, you just like boom.
Do you think it's too much?
But I don't think that's what I'd say to you. I'm like, who am I to judge that? Because I'm kind of like, that's actually you. If we reflect on your whole journey, bro, you've always done that. You've done that the whole time. You were boldly talking about how you're into manifesting. Then you're boldly talking about how and people, as we've said, when you boldly espouse what people say, they love you. And then some people then now, if you do this, they're conditioned to hate this. So then they're like, oh no, my favorite rapper's like turn to this, he's dead to me or whatever. But also there's that's a deeper discussion, which is kind of dope, is that then some people maybe say, oh, I'm not Christian, but I love that for him. And they still support you anyway, which is already a much more kind of mature outlook, which is pretty dope. But I feel like that's just, you've always wore your heart on your sleeve. You can't like help it. So I'm like, my only thing, I think too, like when you're going to start to discuss these things in public, it made me feel like I just want to get more and more well versed and seasoned before. It's very easy with that kind of zeal at the front end to just fly off the deep end, and you don't want to mainly you want to kind of start to be a good representative of what it actually really means, and hopefully know your stuff well enough that then you can feel like you're leading people or discussing things in the right direction. You don't want to be like, it's so easy to be just quite naive at the front end, and you're like,
and you can easily fall into making it about you, which would be very easy for people to just go, oh yes, I'm getting all this attention, I'll make it about me. But like I'm on the same wave in the sense that it's so important to know what the truth is and not act like we're teaching it. Like I think what I've trying to do the most is just show how it's been changing me and just sharing from a humble and honest place. Like if I read something in scripture and it's like blows my mind, I'll be like, oh, this, I've got to share this kind of thing. But
which I would do in private. And this would be the different thing for me, is like I'd share that with you or my close friends or things like that, or, and that's what probably is quite cool and could be quite liberating now is if I was to be, it's building up the courage to just actually be open with who you really are and what your values actually really are, instead of feeling like, which I think a lot of people probably feel in this day and age, there's a sense of when it's so aggressive, like the culture war and all that sort of stuff. It's like, oh, it's easier to just tuck all this stuff down and let's not go there. Let's just stay in these safe spaces where if you're going to try and be more just open and honest about everything that's going on and how it can affect. And I think what I was going to say to you before too was just like, I think as people have seen a lot of the quote unquote traditional values start to be either demonized, attacked, fall away, blah, 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 blah. That's probably was one for me. I was like, it starts to make you go, well, why? And also, where did those values come from? And that's what started me looking at like, oh man, like a lot of these things have Christian origin, or, I'd never had any identity in that.
And related to Thomas's question, how do you feel in regards to this podcast, like about talking about it? Like I'm really proud of you for just doing it. Like it's been really awesome to see that you just step out into it, even if there's a little bit of nervousness there. How are you feeling?
Well, I think the main thing in the podcast overlap, and this is cool because this is like, even speaking back to Broken, when we started, because we're talking about broken, that was the subject of like the brokenness that we carried through the world. And my verse at the end kind of tied up with where I've led to, that seems to have kind of liberated me from that. I didn't intend, it wasn't calculated. But when feeling like led by the Spirit sort of thing, the verse just seemed to go there. And I'm like, already this is kind of bold. Usually my mind would want to shut down. I'll write a different end of the verse there because this might be a bit, I don't want anyone to know, you know what I mean? But instead it felt like this feels like what wants to come out. So I'm just going to trust that and go with it. And then that leads to a place where then same thing. It's like, oh, suddenly, well, if the song's out and we're going to discuss it, that means you got to step out in faith and just do it, even if it makes me uncomfortable. So I feel like, because the podcast itself is probably something where we want it to be more personal, like it's
us.
It's actually us. So even in the front end, like we said, oh, we're going to talk about this probably later in the season. It feels like in those early eps, we're dancing around something where if we were talking in private, the way that the tangent we might go. So it was like at a certain point, it's like, well, we can't really have a totally honest, authentic podcast if I'm not going to be totally honest and authentic. And even in some of those other subjects we want to go into, if we're going to talk about them, then we're going to talk about them, and whatever happens, happens. But kind of like, I think that means that, yeah, this is definitely, it becomes a huge part of your life because it transforms your life. Very mindful of the fact that we want it to be a music podcast too. And also, but how many times can we talk about the same music things or stories before you're like, all right, we're all over this. Like, so we want to talk about life. We want to get to a point where we're like, well, what's happening in the world? What's happening in life? What's happening? Absolutely. Like we're doing, new albums. We'll do a Forthwrite album. There's all these things we're so excited about, but we want to be able to go wherever we go.
Yeah, we are just going to be ourselves. So it is just going to be forthright. We're going to be exactly honest with what's happening in our lives and stuff like that. But it's not going to be just one thing or just another,
Yeah, that's right. And that means that this was kind of, I guess, part of it.
Are you worried about the fact that when you stand on Christian values and you proclaim Jesus' name, you do get a target on your back? Are you worried about that?
Probably haven't thought about it that much yet. I mean, I think we understand that it comes with the territory, unfortunately. But it's kind of, it always has. And that's why when you read into it, you're like, right from its inception, it was persecuted. That's why it makes no sense that it ever got off the ground, because it's like, it never was like, it faced that the whole journey. And it's kind of like, that's what's so incredible about it.
Interesting, because I feel like our early careers almost foreshadow this. Because we were hated, man. We were doing all the music stuff. We had to go through some pretty turbulent times. Like
we were always on the outside looking in more than being. But I think we just couldn't help it, man. It was our nature. Because you can play the game. Everyone's playing the game, and that's what's so funny when you because we get to meet all the dudes, and some dudes confide in you more privately, and then you get to watch their version, out there, versus what they say to us, and you're like, They're all playing the game, aren't you?
Yeah,
So you can
yeah.
do that. Absolutely. It's sensible. It's good business to play the game, to say the right things and to all that stuff. But it just sort of never seemed to be in our nature. So maybe it was preparing us for like, and that's what's kind of funny. It's like, you know, that what you start to get back in your zone and you're like, oh, we could do this. You can be this version of things and it'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun and people will love it. But it's like, is it fully authentic? You kind of want to be able to do both. Like it brings that lightness and that joy back where you can laugh. We can do classic Fourth Rizzy sounding songs that, yeah, it's going to be interesting without them swear words, cuz like,
Gosh darn it.
Yeah. Like if you listen back to, man, even like Dem Gaines is like such a banger. And I'm like, bro, like literally nearly every line or second line we swear. I'm like, that's just the main way I would sort of always add emphasis or it makes it funnier. So I'm like, it's going to be a journey of like, man, can you still have like really funny bars and learn how to sort of do that without cussing out the word.
And doing it from love.
Yeah, love.
Sweet. Do you want another question or do you want to wrap it up? We're closing in on an hour and 20.
We can do one more because we can cut a few little bits and pieces if we need to.
We don't cut any of this gold. This is good.
Yeah, this is magic. You can see your passion. You know, your passion has come alight in this episode.
Well, I feel a little bit like I think I'll get, even just sharing the full testimony of it all, it feels like, yeah, when we're really comfortable, we go into that even in more depth. But it is like a bit of it's a process. It's
Yeah, well, see, this is what's happened. I keep writing brilliant questions and then Matt will chime in with exactly what I just wrote down. So this one you nearly just said, which was, you know how like there's like a lot of gotcha moments online with people with different worldviews, you know, so-and-so destroys so-and-so, you know, whatever. Yeah. Obviously you guys have acknowledged it's like a journey we're all on. And we're not saying we're in a place we've succeeded and we're now preaching. Like we're not teaching what you said, Matt.
Yeah.
What do you want your fans and people who listen to the podcast and everything to know about where you guys are at and what that, you know, grace that you're hoping will be extended to you when you swear or when you do things that you say you're not necessarily quote unquote perfect?
Yeah, I love that. I guess that's the big thing is like, yep, we're sort of speaking to that in some of the other episodes and probably something we need to keep talking about is just that lack of nuance in the modern world. Like everything's sensationalized, everything's soundbitey, everything's quick, reactive. It's designed that way. So trying to push towards a world where people can be more and more measured and then try and look for context, and also, yeah, there's going to be times you make a mistake and you're like, oh.
Exactly.
Maybe I didn't mean that, or like
maybe that could have been done with a different tone or something like that.
That's going to happen.
We're going to mess up, and people no one just becomes staved and then they just get it right from then on. So we want to remain humble and open and hold each other accountable and be mirrors to one another and show us, like, try and just guide each other to a better place. And we just hope we can plant seeds in people's life if they either don't have faith or had faith or wherever they're at, that they can hopefully see that it's not what they thought it was, and go through similar stages. Like I would love, like I want to make this it's the most important part of my life. Like that's what happens. So I want to make it my life pretty much, because it is. Like I can only be honest with where I'm at. So I'll be sharing it quite openly, and
I think it can just be done in a way too, like it helps for people when you can sort of diffuse the amount of emotion attached to it. Like I think, because I believe it to be objectively true, like with time, it sort of shines a light. Things come to pass that sort of really help illustrate and speak to it really well. So it's and because after coming back and then going into so many circles or friends where it was met with the typical response that you expect, and then over time you watch them slowly become Christian, it's because I think it just speaks for itself. And so for a lot of people out there, if they're like, there's a void that they're trying to fill, it's like, that's cool, man. Like do all the things that the world tells you is going to work. Oh, that didn't work, but this is the new thing. Buy this book. Oh, come and buy this book. Go to see this. Fine, just do it. But I don't believe it will work. Like they're all a Band-Aid. It's all a coping mechanism. None of that is ever actually going to be the whole thing. That was the biggest thing. So when I have friends who I relate deeply to, like you, we share a lot of experience. It's like there's a trust there that's kind of like, I can't force you to do anything, but I can just share with you like, oh, where I'm at or what's happening. And eventually it speaks for itself. So with other friends, it's the same thing. The cynicism or all that gradually starts to subside, and you become more and more curious of like, for people where things are working for them or they think they are, it's like, oh, cool. It's going to be hard for you to want to look for anything more because at the moment that suffices. You think that that's obviously the more superficial someone is. If they've got the superficial things in life, they think that, oh, I don't need anything else because this is everything. Whereas sometimes you need to kind of go through this heartache or disillusionment or loss or different things where the world lets you down for you to start to want to even look for more. And so, yeah, it's trying to find a balance where it's like, it doesn't have to be, I don't know, we just go there when we go there. I think there's a lot of room for real deep, cool discussion that's very insightful, and that was the big thing that happened for me. I just didn't know or expect there to be that much wealth of knowledge. The resistance I even felt after I had the encounter, the experience, I felt like I didn't even want to read the Bible. Like so it was like very fascinating thing. There's a lot of things that I went through that then I just didn't expect to then on the other side of it, what you're going to find. And that's the biggest thing. I'd probably want to gradually just share things of that because you're just like, and that was the same thing that would happen with us. So when we would talk, it would felt like there'd be times when then something would just come out because I'm like, oh, bro, that totally relates to where Paul says this and this. And then over time, there's so many haymakers in there, man, that it's like, in the end, it just speaks for itself. You don't have to do anything. You just kind of like, hey, yeah, man, that's sweet, man. If that's working for you, but you know, this kind of, I don't know, blah, blah, blah.
You know, you spoke about my my boldness before. It was really interesting thinking about that because like I was bold, but what I was bold for was always up for grabs. Like my identity would always shift depending on what I guess the culture approved of. So who I was and what I was bold for was always changing with the times, with the tides.
This is like one where I was like, man, this is, and anyone in connection to your team or your career to be like freaking out because this is one where like being bold for this is like the world hates this. Like this is enemy number one, man. So like in a lot of ways that's like, man, you're potentially throwing your whole career away if you're actually open about this.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, you just bold. That's what I respect though, because I'm just like, man, he just doesn't care. It's just six. He's always been that way. So it's like, you might be just, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go book some tour at these mega venues and then go and boldly, but that's insanity, bro. Like, what are you doing, man? Like your whole fan base is just going to be like, oh man, I hate him now. And I'm like, he doesn't care. It's just actual six. So it's a different level of boldness because it's being bold against the world though, in my eyes. Like,
which I was never good at.
But like, it does, that's what it does to you. It kind of liberates you in that way where you're not, so that's incredible in that way. And
beautiful because like who you are and your morals and your values is all set in stone. It's all written. It's no longer what like people will ask your opinion.
Think. It's not, what do I think? It's like, I don't care what I think. And that's a big thing when you're listening to and this is where we can get into some of the dangers of the modern church and this overlap into the feels and this new agey sort of infiltration, the prosperity gospel-y stuff, because you've got to be careful with how when you're hearing sermon and those things, it's like, is it this guy's or girl? Is it your thoughts or is it the word of God? That's what you want to discern with. There's a real, there's an importance for discernment in general, just in the modern world, but even in relation to that, because it's like there's a lot of heresy, there's a lot of stuff that just can easily like blur the lines. That's always happening, and that's why the more well-read and the humility aspect keeps being engaged on a daily basis, because you have to keep remembering that you don't know everything and try and just kind of keep.
I'll just throw one last question at you guys. And I think it sort of pertains sort of what you were just saying is like we keep sort of saying the world, and people who aren't Christians or haven't heard that a lot might be thinking that you're thinking of other people who aren't Christians.
Right.
What do you mean when you say the world and how you're going to relate to that?
I guess in a Christian sense, when they refer to Satan or the devil, and this is where I guess I feel like Eckhart, and that's like saying the ego and the pain body, it's pointing to the fact that there's this other entity, which if you then date that back to Genesis, all those sorts of things, it's like Satan's like a fallen angel because he wasn't happy with being I guess,
less than God.
subordinate to God. He wants to be like God. And that's why every other pitch, everything else, everything in the new age thing, it's like me, I'll manifest my dreams, what I want, like me. All those things, it's like finding it through me, always that I'm going to do it. So the world was kind of like, we're in his dominion, and then it becomes that the world is the superficial stuff. And that's why even with Christ, he tries to tempt Christ with the stuff. It's like, I'll give you, even that's just so dope, because then when you talk about, but we can go on this stuff forever, man. But I feel like obviously that once you encounter sin and then you're trying to turn away from the flesh, fleshly desire, worldly pleasure, all of these sorts of things, and you see how hard it is. And the moment you get overworked, like in my case, when I'm like, if you're working a job, you're doing all these other things and you're exhausted, as soon as you're physically exhausted, how easily it becomes more and more tempting to give in to the flesh, because you're just looking for a fix. You're just looking for pleasure. You're looking for, so even I guess in a scriptural sense, the fact that before Jesus like begins his ministry, he like basically fasts for like 40 days, like starves himself to pure weakness to where he's most susceptible. And then he's led out into the wilderness to go head to head with the devil. And then the devil's trying to tempt him with all these different ways that he tries to tempt us. And then obviously the king just rebukes him and slaps him away. And it's like, nah, because it's like, that's what you're dealing with, that level of perfection where we're so weak, we give into that so quickly. But yeah, I guess you would just say the worldly stuff is getting the people pleaser thing, getting the people out there to give me my sense of self-worth, my achievement, my status, how much money I've earned. All of these things are going to give me my sense of identity. And it's telling you, no, none of that means anything. Like God will obviously take care of that stuff for you. He'll provide for you. That's like Jesus saying, give us each day our daily bread. Like, don't worry about it. He'll provide for me, sort of thing. But looking up there, your identity is in the Creator himself, sort of thing.
What do you think of when, like, it's quite confronting when you're not a Christian, when people talk about Satan, because we all picture him as this devil with horns and like living in this world of fire and stuff like that, but he's not that. Well, how would you answer that? Like, how would you speak on that?
I guess the biggest way to illustrate, the best way to illustrate it is like, and this is, so there's so many of these sayings, bro, that like you never knew what they meant. But the saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. That's because it's not about it being, it's become more overt and weird. Like you're going to watch the Grammys or watch some bizarre thing and you might see some stuff that feels more and more quote unquote satanic, or even the Olympics and all these things where it's like, but it's the fact that he's invisible, but they just realize there's an entity that is actually when you boil it down, he's looking for your destruction. But what it's doing is he tempts you with things that seem like pleasure at the front end. That's why all those other addictions you suffered from, they're like, it's tempting you with pleasure at the front end, but it leads to your destruction. So all of that stuff, it's tempting you with things that seem like they're dangling the carrot in front of you. You take the bait and then you end up, you're raped of your soul, you're hollow, you're empty, vacuous vessel at the end. So what God or Christ is trying to say is like, I know all that stuff looks tempting, but you need to look away from that. Come to me first. The real thing is not of this world. It's not of that stuff. The blessing for us was going and exhausting all of those things and seeing that they lead nowhere. Even worse, they actually ruin you. And it's so normal at this point that I feel like everyone, and they can't distinguish or differentiate between my thoughts and just this. If the more you look at it, you start to see that there is this kind of entity. It seems like it works in cohesion. It works as a sort of like an invisible thing that most people don't know are there. We're born into the world. We think it's us. And that's what he wants. So it's like, if you don't know it's there, there's a spiritual war going on. You're just not aware of it. Life's meaningless. It all just randomly happened. We're all the product of this, like nothing means anything. So just live your truth, do what feels good for you. And it's all bullshit, man. Like it all leads to nowhere. So it's like, once you've experienced that enough, then you kind of like, I'm not interested anymore. And even though, and it's so radical because I just never thought that where you would start to find answers to it all was in the one place that I was not looking.
Yeah.
Like I would look anywhere except there.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it's scary to that, because like the devil, the way he speaks in that those internal thoughts that come up that we associate with ourselves so often, but this modern world that we're in is saying that our identity is that voice. So you're seeing a lot of kids thinking that their feelings define who they are. That gets dark, man.
It gets hectic. So that's another episode in itself.
That's a big rabbit hole.
Yeah, we can go down all sorts of rabbit holes. But yeah, I guess it seems like it's coming real, bro. Featured verse on the album. The lyrics came out, so we're it's led us here. We're starting to have a little chat publicly, and we'll go everywhere. We're going to talk about lots of stuff. People don't have to fully panic. It's okay.
Yeah, we're not just going to talk about this, but we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about a bit of everything, cuz it's going to get real. But we thought we might as well break the ice, so then at least we can actually talk openly and honestly about whatever we want to talk about, and just see where it goes. Yeah. Any other thoughts, man? Or you want to wrap it up for this week? I guess we're excited. We'll be doing a video pretty
soon,
quickly, and it's going to be dropping, I guess, probably in the next week or two. You guys will hear this song. Yeah, pretty proud of it. It feels pretty awesome. So I felt very lucky, very blessed to be on it, bro.
It's really, really, really cool, because it's like my verse doesn't talk about me coming to Christ, where your verse does, which is reflective of how it actually went in real life.
Where we were at that point. Exactly right.
Which is really cool. I love that.
And then even later, that's so true, because then it felt like later, then the album was done, and then it was almost like you're like, man, I wish I sort of wrote, because you started writing this other song, which is real dope, and it's like, oh, you could both have it kind of somewhere intertwined, but it's like, no, this is actually where we were at the time. Hey, it kind of, it just happened, yo.
Yep.
Well,
thanks for tuning in.
If you're still with us at the end here, I don't know how long we've gone, but if you're still there, babe, we love you.
We appreciate you.
You're very cool. You're a good egg, So let's see. But I guess we'll be back next week, and once again, we have no idea what we're talking about, so we can all find out together. And it's almost tour time though, so maybe we should talk about that soon. So we hope to see a lot of you at the tour, because it's going to be wild.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
All right.
Peace out, homies.
Peace out.